Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act is back on the Senate floor, supposedly today. Now I looked on the schedule and I didn't see it, but it was reported by Megyn Kelly that it's back on the floor today, and on Monday there will be a vote. So this is absolutely huge. As you know, despite the executive order, which we're very grateful for, there are still some states who are refusing to comply with it. And the NCAA policy is not what we initially thought it was. There are major loopholes that essentially allow male athletes into women's locker rooms and to still compete, believe it or not. So it is imperative that this act passes through the Senate.
79% of the people in this country, Republican and Democrat, say it is wrong for men or boys to participate in women's sports. John Thune told me he's going to get it to the floor. He hadn't done it. Now, it's time to put up or shut up. 50 years of Title IX, it has been decimated by the Biden and the Democrats and all the far left progressives. Now is the time to put pressure on the Democrats, get them on the vote, that they're going to vote against girls and women. Just don't worry about winning or losing on this. Let's get it out there where people can see what's going on.
Well, we can report exclusively now that the bill will, in fact, hit the floor. It's expected to hit tomorrow. All GOP senators are expected to vote yes. We'll see about the other side of the aisle. They got to get through the cloture vote first, which is where they vote on whether they should have a vote. That's where the Democrats can stop it. So, in other words, you need 60 yes votes to allow a vote. And if they can't get 60 yes votes to allow a vote, then the bill dies. If they get 60 yes votes to allow a vote, then the Republicans should get this through since they have a majority in the Senate. And we're told, all GOP senators are expected to vote yes on the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act, which does exactly what it says it's going to do and keeps biological boys out of girls' sports. Will the Democrats, 7 of them, cross over to allow a cloture vote so we can see a substantive vote go forward? We'll watch out. And we will be naming every single name who votes against this. We will be looking at their districts, and I guarantee you that there will be an activation like you've never seen before in every single one of those senators' districts. I'm talking to you, Democrats. Forget Republicans if they did this. Every single Democrat, because this issue has over 80% support with the American public. What kind of villain would vote against even allowing a vote to protect young girls? We will be naming you all if you vote against this.
Wow. So thankfully, it is going to be allowed. It is going to be heard on the Senate floor. But obviously, we need it to get to the stage where they can vote on it. And if you don't even allow it to get to that stage, I mean, as she said, what sort of villain would put up such a fight to not even allow a vote on this bill? Considering that the majority of people in this country, including Democrats, including their very own constituents, are against males competing in girls' and women's sports. What happened to actually honouring the will of the people, whichever party you belong to? Surely the will of the people is what's important. That's why they're there in the first place, to represent us. And we're not for this. We're not for what we're seeing at the moment. That is still continuing despite the executive order. So absolutely, I'll be following this story very closely. And we do need to take note of these Democratic senators who are still pushing this agenda. And if anything, this should be career-ending, considering that this party claims to be the party of women, claims to be the party that is for women's rights. This cannot slide. If they block this bill from even being voted on.
So let's find out. And on the other side, if we get 7 Democrats who allow this vote to go forward, who vote for the bill, anybody who actually substantively supports it, we will be celebrating you here on the Megyn Kelly Show. And don't think it doesn't matter. Trust me, it does.
So let's follow this closely and let's hope for the best. Sal Grover on X said, I and Kay Dansky went to every single Democrat senator's office to give them information on why they should vote yes on the Protection of Women and Girls Sports Act.
Hi, this is Kara Dansky. I am here in Washington, D.C. with none other than Sal Grover and Cap Deeds. We are currently at the office of Mazie Hirono, a senator from Hawaii, and we have just asked her staff to relay the message that we are here to ask Senate Democrats to vote yes on the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act when it comes to the floor for a vote. You want to say hi?
Hi. Hello, everyone.
So Pam Bondi is on the case, and she is holding the states that refuse to comply with the executive order accountable for not protecting girls, not protecting women, and not protecting the integrity of women's sports. So Attorney General Pam Bondi is warning California, Maine, and Minnesota to comply with the federal anti-discrimination laws that require them to keep boys out of women's sports or face legal action, Fox News has learned. Washington State needs to be added, as we saw recently. Bondi sent letters to attorneys general in California, Maine, and Minnesota on Tuesday. The Department of Justice will hold accountable states and state entities that violate federal law, Bondi wrote. Indeed, we have already begun to do so. Bondi was referring to the Justice Department's move to sue Illinois and New York earlier in February for defying federal immigration laws. We also stand ready to sue states and state entities that defy federal anti-discrimination laws. President Donald Trump recently directed the DOJ and the Education Department to prioritize enforcement actions against athletic associations that deny girls an equal opportunity to participate in sports and athletic events by requiring them to compete against boys, which is direct discrimination against girls. Bondi said those state athletic associations, including in California, Maine, and Minnesota, have issued defiant statements saying that they would continue requiring girls to compete against boys in sports and athletic events. And I love the wording of this letter, requiring girls to compete against boys. The way these states word it is that we are giving everybody equal opportunities to participate in sports, regardless of gender identity. But what that actually means is that you are discriminating against girls and women, forcing them to compete against boys. If they want to participate, they have to be willing to compete against boys. That is no option. If they want to participate, they have to be willing to compete under conditions that are unsafe and unfair, that do not provide them an equal playing field to achieve what they are able to achieve in their own right. Bondi said that she hopes it doesn't come to this. The Department of Justice does not want to have to sue states or state entities or seek termination of their federal funds. It shouldn't have to come to this. If they care about the interests of their constituents, they would do the right thing. If they cared about women and girls, they would do the right thing. The letter said that they just want them to comply with the law. A federal law requires giving girls an equal opportunity to participate in sports and athletic events by ensuring that girls need to compete only with other girls, not with boys. We will leverage every legal option necessary to ensure state compliance with federal law and President Trump's executive order protecting women's sports. So she's saying that they are breaking the law, and they're saying that we are complying with state law. And if the federal government decides to take them to court, it will be up to the courts to decide whether the state is actually discriminating against girls in this situation. And as the governor of Minnesota said, I will see you in court. That was her response to Trump.
Laura Libby is here now, and good morning to you. A week ago, you shot this out on X. You said another day, another instance of an unremarkable biological male athlete who could not win against other males dominating women's sports. It's still policy today. What's going to give?
Well, hopefully Governor Mills is going to give. That's the answer in the end. President Trump is right on with issuing this executive order that the vast majority of Americans and Mainers agree with. They don't want to see boys in girls' sports. And so we have a lot at risk here in our state. $250 million in federal funding. Governor Mills has got to let go of this extreme policy.
When can the money be turned off? When does that start?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm sure that's one that, Governor Mills intends to take to the courts. But hopefully it doesn't get turned off at all. This policy needs to be reversed so that Maine girls have a fair and level playing field, and we have the $250 million that we need for Maine students.
Mm-hmm.
So we have schools refusing to comply with the executive order and still requiring girls to compete against boys. But what we also have are women being silenced. Laurel Libby was literally stopped from speaking on this issue.
Last Monday, Maine girls walked into an arena, excited to compete in the state championship for pole vault. What an honor. After years of hard work, that hard work pays off to be competing at this level. But that excitement was quickly dashed as they learned that there was a biological male participating and that their hard work didn't matter. Can you imagine, just for a minute, their extreme disappointment and their sense of betrayal? Can you imagine trying to put your best foot forward, but knowing that the outcome was already predetermined by natural biological advantages?
The member will defer. Is the member attempting to provide comment about why the member was justified in posting a photo of a minor?
Not justifying, no. Explaining the silencing of Maine girls, the canceling of girls' sports.
The member will defer. The chair recognizes the representative from Portland, Representative Moonen, and inquires as to his point of order.
The representative is trying to make this a policy debate. There is legislation pending on that policy that is not currently on the floor of the House. And I request that you direct her to restrict her comments to the order that is on the floor of the House.
Since I don't know how many more sentences I'll be allowed to speak, let me put this. Boys participating in girls' sports is not fair.
The House will be at ease. Leadership approach the well.
Mr. Speaker, the state championship was a public event. The individual in question determined of his own free will to participate, and his photos are posted publicly on multiple websites. The reason that folks are upset about this post is that it exposed truth, and now people are mad that indeed, after being told that this is not happening and it doesn't matter, that there are boys participating in girls' sports. Boys taking the place of girls.
It's embarrassing that the state of Maine is allowing this discrimination against girls. They keep talking about her as if she posted some private photo. This is a photo that's in a public domain because a release form would have been signed. When your kid joins a school, when your kid joins a club, a sports club, a team that has websites that promote the school, that promote the club, parents have to sign release forms. So stop talking about it as if it's some sort of sinister issue. A photo of a minor. This is a photo that is in the public domain because the parents would have signed a release form. This is a photo that is on websites documenting a public state championship. So cut it out. The real reason, like she said, they're upset about the photo is because a couple of years earlier, this athlete was competing against boys, because that's what he is. There's no difference. Now this person is stood atop the podium in a girls' championship. This is what they're justifying, and that's what that photo exposed. And this is what it has led to. Discrimination against women across the board, whether you're a state rep who's in a position of authority, in a position of power, or a young girl who just wants to compete in sports in a fair environment, in a safe environment. And they're the ones who are trying to justify discrimination against girls while discriminating and silencing and infringing upon the First Amendment rights of this representative. And it goes hand in hand, funny enough. Discriminating against girls on the basis of sex when it comes to sports usually is accompanied with infringing upon their First Amendment rights. Why? Because they don't want them to object.
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is suing the NCAA. He wants the organization to force gender testing or sex screenings on student athletes.
Now, this is in response to President Trump's executive order banning men from competing in women's sports. A policy released this month by the NCAA says an athlete born a man cannot compete on a women's team, but can still take part in practice. Paxton says this is not in compliance with the executive order. If a gender testing policy were put in place, more than 500,000 student athletes would be affected. The NCAA has not commented on the state's demand.
And now this brings me to the NCAA, who is still discriminating against girls who have literally left the locker room open to male athletes.
The policy states an athlete's sex is determined by their birth records, but critics say individuals are responsible for verifying athletes' eligibility. And state laws supersede NCAA rules and regulations. Co-founder of the Independent Council on Women's Sports and former All-American tennis player herself, Kim Jones, joins us now. Kim, we saw the executive order signed. The NCAA said, good, now we got the rules. Yeah. But we're not out of the woods yet. You are very skeptical.
I'm not just skeptical that NCAA policy is rotten to the core. There's not a single line of it that is in compliance or in alignment with the executive order.
So if you have a trans athlete playing male, playing in a women's sport, we think that that's in our rearview mirror. But you said it's not.
Not remotely. And we need a bulletproof policy. The women across the United States and in the NCAA deserve a bulletproof policy. The current one that's out there would allows any man membership on a women's team, and then they discriminate between layers of participation with just a birth certificate, which is totally changeable in 44 states.
Wait a second. So in 44 states, I could change my birth certificate, whether it's name or gender?
Yes, correct.
So if I decide I want to switch genders and play in that gender sports, if my birth certificate will get me passed for the NCAA.
With the executive order, I believe that the passports are going to have the correct sex marker, but birth certificates can be changed. And there are even schools advising parents of trans athletes that they can get the birth certificate changed. And the NCAA, kind of like the Olympic Committee, are going to accept that to mean that the person is female because they have the documentation. That's how the Olympic Committee justified allowing Iman Khalif and Lin Ju-Ting to punch women in the face in the boxing ring.
That's correct. As it is written, there is no other screening mechanism. And the policy is actually completely arbitrary because it doesn't define sex. It doesn't limit women's teams to female athletes exclusively, and that is necessary.
So it's premature celebration last week.
It's not just premature celebration. It's a brazen attempt by the NCAA to call the president's bluff.
So they saw the executive order, and this is what they said. This is what they told Fox. The policy is clear that there are no waivers available, and student athlete assigned male at birth may not compete on a women's team with amended birth certificates or other forms of ID.
So how are they? There is no way to tell whether or not someone has an amended birth certificate. And the policy as it is written doesn't define women. It doesn't define sex. You can change your birth certificate, and there's no screening mechanism in place and no accountability by the NCAA to oversee this.
Because we have to acknowledge that we live in a time where somebody could have female on their birth certificate, where somebody could present themselves as a woman, and you're not even allowed to ask questions. Even SJSU haven't confirmed that they had a trans athlete on their roster, a male athlete on their roster. They are yet to confirm that because they are citing privacy. There is nothing stopping a school allowing a trans athlete to compete unattached, as Sadie Schreiner tried to do at Boston University.
I want to make this video to document how universities were responding to the recent executive order and show that they're not looking at federal documents. They're not looking at my passport or my birth certificate. They're not even simply calling me before banning me. They are hearing word that I was assigned male at birth, and that is enough for them to ban.
They denied Sadie because of the executive order, not because of the NCAA policy. So all it takes is a school to be okay with it and to accept the birth certificate, and this trans athlete can compete. And their policy says that they are also given all other benefits and allowed to practice with female athletes, meaning that on paper, according to the policy, they can go into the locker room because the policy doesn't expressly forbid them from going into the locker room, into the girls' locker room.
But, Paul, the executive order, you know the President Trump's intent. Mm-hmm. What could the NCAA do to make sure the president's intent to make sure that biological males don't play in women's sports? If the NCAA was sincere, what would their rules look like? What would it sound like?
There are two things that would be absolutely mandatory. The first is that they must decide that membership on a women's team is for female student athletes exclusively. And then secondly, there must be a screening mechanism to ensure that no male athletes can cross that barrier.
Blood?
No, you don't need a blood sample. A simple cheek swab will absolutely take care of it. It's just checking for the SRY gene.
Absolute facts there. Bring back cheek swabs. Because it's not even just trans athletes. It could be another Imam Khalif situation, a male athlete with DSD, a male athlete assigned female at birth, as allegedly Imam Khalif was, has all the documentation, even a birth certificate. So no, athletes have to go through rigorous tests anyway. A cheek swab, a quick cheek swab, is absolutely nothing. But it's a foolproof way of ensuring that female athletes don't pay an even higher price of losing out on championships, of losing out on medals, losing out on trophies, accolades, records, all to male athletes. If a cheek swab can prevent that, it is more than worth it. It's a very small ask of the NCAA to incorporate that into their policy. So it appears there's still a long way to go, but we have made progress and we are getting there. We will get there eventually. We have to keep applying the pressure. The current policy just isn't good enough and they know it. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Like, comment and subscribe. Take care of yourselves and God willing, I will see you in the next video.